For me, personally, the reason I'm interested in this, the reason my family is interested in this, is because this is a dream. And I'm going to explain why this is a dream for us. I remember my father telling us about his relationship to the land of Israel. Keep in mind, my father was raised in communist Russia, suffered from anti-Semitism throughout his youth, and then eventually in the Russian military and subsequently in university as well. And even in the mid-70s or even early 70s, he yearned to come back home, which meant to come back to the land of Israel. And keep in mind, this is a time when I can't imagine he even saw images of the land of Israel. He had no idea how it looked. He only knew two things. He knew it was home, and he probably knew where it was on the map. And he sacrificed everything. There was a huge family business over there. He once told me that in those days, in the 70s, to want to leave Russia and go to Israel was like today to leave Canada to move to, I don't know, Rwanda or something. You were perceived by local people as someone who was out of his mind, and he sacrificed everything to come to a land which he didn't even know how it looked. Friends, today I can't escape from feeling like this, that because our population is growing and our land is so small, inevitably more and more people are going to live in flats. And by doing so, it's beautiful to live in a flat in a nice building, especially if it has a seaside view, but we lose the touch to earth. We lose the touch to land. We lose the touch of what it means to own a garden and nurture it. And keep in mind, this is how we were created. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us, the Torah says, He places us in a garden to nurture it. We were destined to be farmers, to nurture earth, to care for the land, to be surrounded by greenery, by trees, by flowers, not to be surrounded by concrete. And even more so, when it comes to Judaism and the land of Israel, it's impossible to separate the two. Keep in mind, even our Chagim, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, which are seasonal agricultural Chagim, as the Torah says, I'm not making it up, the Jewish people took these agricultural Chagim and combined them and partnered with celebrations of historical events. In other words, we partnered our destiny with the agriculture of the land of Israel. So many mitzvot in the Torah have to do with classic traditional land farming. And when we live in an urban society, the only way that we as people can connect to our natural tendency to garden, to nurture the land, and our religious identity of observing mitzvot, and our national identity of connecting to a land which means so much to us. The only way to do it is to go out and buy a piece of agricultural land which we can nurture ourselves. And I can only think about it, I can only imagine what our ancestors would have done to have this opportunity. Some of our ancestors traveled huge distances and gave up so much just to be able to kiss the sacred earth of the land of Israel. What would they have done to be able just to buy a piece of land and to own the sacred earth of Israel and to observe the mitzvot which it calls for? They would have done anything. And here today, we have this opportunity. My dear friends, I'm not here to give you business advice, because if I would, my recommendation would be don't listen to me. Look to people who are more successful than I am when it comes to business. But from a halachic perspective, from a value perspective, I can say that this is something that I am very interested in, and I would encourage you to also explore this opportunity. I just want to end off by a brief observation on the concept of oil. You know, we're doing this literally 24 hours before Hanukkah. Thursday night, Graham remembers that a few weeks ago we went to 2 military bases to dedicate something which our community contributed. And at those bases, I developed a few relationships with officers, And basically Thursday night I was invited to give a shir on Hanukkah. So Thursday night at about 6:45 in the evening, I drove up the car to one of those bases, Bach Golani, and I gave them a shir on Hanukkah. And I spoke about what olives represent in the Torah. Because we find that halachically, ideally, the best oil to light for Hanukkah candles is olive oil. And in the mitzvah of Bikurim, which is also an agricultural mitzvah, there would be a whole parade to Jerusalem, and leading the parade would be Rabbi Kleinman from Leeds, and Susan Cohen from Netanya. Leading the parade would be a bull, and the Mishnah says that the bull would be decorated with a crown made out of olive branches. And the Maharsha over there explains what does an olive branch symbolize? What does an olive symbolize? And he says Keter Kehuna, Keter Malchut, and Keter Torah. Now, just for a minute, raise your hand if you've ever visited the Tower of London. Okay, if you haven't, put it on your list of things to do. It's an amazing place to visit. A huge exhibit in the Tower of London is, I don't know if you remember, well, obviously you see all the royal dresses and everything, and also you see the royal crowns. Do you remember that too? By the time you get to the next part of the exhibition, most people are already too tired, but that part really attracted my attention because it speaks about the Queen's coronation. Me that Queen Elizabeth's coronation, not everyone knows this, was actually organized by Prince Philip. You know, they were wondering what kind of role he's going to have in general, and one of the things he took for himself was that he'll be the one determining everything about the Queen's coronation. So if you go to the Tower of London, you could see a lot about the history of the coronation. And I noticed that so much of the ritual of Queen Elizabeth's coronation is taken from biblical ideas. And one of them was literally they anointed the Queen, as they will with Prince Charles, with olive oil. Why? Because that's how we anointed our kings. How do you think King David was anointed? How do you think King Solomon was anointed? That's why an olive oil represents, the Maharsha says, Malchut, royalty, monarchy, aristocracy. It also represents Kehuna. Kehuna are the priests. The Kohen Gadol was anointed with olive oil. And the Maharsha then continues and says it also represents Torah. And on Hanukkah, the Rambam spoke about this, Rabbi Kleinman mentioned that Rambam. The Rambam speaks about how Hanukkah is a time when royalty went back to priesthood. The Kohanim became the kings again. And Hanukkah is also a celebration of Torah Shabbal Peh. So the olive oil represents the combination of royalty, monarchy, priesthood, and Torah all together. Friends, to sit over here today and see beautiful, fine, pure olive oil produced by people who wanted to take aliyah to a next step, not just living in Israel, which is very important, and owning a flat, but owning land and working that land and nurturing that land and taking an interest in the earth and visiting it, and then becoming owners of trees which then produce olive oil, which is so central to the history and to the culture of our nation, to me is really an inspiring idea. And I invite you to explore the opportunity to do the same. I wish you all not only a Shavua Tov, not only a Chanukah Sameach, but if I might say so, a Yishuv Tov. Yishuv Tov is what you tell people when they're about to move, or Aliyah Ne'imah. So now, please God, when we embark on the next step of our Aliyah, a Yishuv Tov.